Welcome, Bastronauts. This is Teal's Bass Galaxy, an endless dimension of fishing legends and degenerates connecting through raw, real, in-person conversations and stories. No, this is not your average fishing podcast. There's no rules. There's no limits. 3, 2, 1, blast off. This podcast is intended for mature audiences. Viewer discretion is advised. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. Attention all Bastronauts. This podcast is supported by the Bass Galaxy's title sponsor, Waypoint Angler Supply, the Midwest's new landing pad for hardcore anglers just like you and me. If you're looking for the sneaky goods you can't find anywhere else, look no further. Waypoint Angler Supply has the largest offering of JDM tackle in the Midwest, and they are right here in Minnesota on Lake Minnetonka. This is truly a place every bass fisherman in Minnesota needs to visit because we finally have a tackle shop in the state that's as dreamy as the ones you find down south. And the staff at Waypoint Angler Supply understands the various needs of us anglers, which is why you'll find the selection there so enticing. Ross and the folks at Waypoint Angler Supply are passionate about carrying the right stuff, providing an authentic customer experience, and they listen to the anglers. And it doesn't end at JDM baits. They stock all the top U.S. brands, as well as local Minnesota brands like Vocelka Fishing and Customs, Arsenal Fishing, Bait Lab Custom Swim Baits, All Terrain Tackle, Bagley Northland, Outcast Tackle, and more. So stop into their store on Lake Minnetonka or visit their website, waypointanglersupply.com. That's waypointanglersupply.com. Use the code GALAXY2401 to save 20% on your next tackle binge. The Bass Galaxy is also supported by Vocelka Fishing and Customs, Supreme Lending, Dream Team, Lake Country Insurance Services, My Wedge Motor Support, just north of Memphis, Barbecue and Catering. Thank you. You got your Busch Light, dude? This is like an extra special treat. We've got the man, the myth, the legend, Kyle Wood, in the house.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Into the cabin, yeah.
Yeah, dude, you're like a ghost. You're this mystical creature, and I've heard more stories about you. And just to spend some time with you in the cabin this weekend has been just really cool, man. I look up to you, and I think you're probably one of the better sleeper guests on the podcast that maybe nobody knows about, or people do know about. But I think that you're a pleasant surprise for anybody who maybe isn't familiar with you. But how did you get started into bass fishing, Kyle Wood?
Well, first of all, I appreciate the intro because that was very kind and lovely. But
from the bottom of my heart,
I could feel it. Yeah, into bass fishing, really, I grew up in, I was actually born in Illinois.
Really?
Moline, Illinois.
Moline?
Moline, the dirty Quad Cities. My parents are from Iowa. My dad's from Southern Iowa, and so, he grew up fishing farm ponds, and he'd come up. My grandpa and my great grandpa would come up to. They'd go to Red. They'd drive all the way from Indianola, Iowa, all the way up to Red Lake, or really anywhere they could, but they kind of settled on whitefish. So my dad early on got a walleye fishing bug, right?
Sure.
Because if you're from Iowa, that's what you got to come up to Minnesota to do is catch walleyes.
That's the thing.
And so, yeah, I kind of got into just fishing through that, right? Like whether it was farm pond or my dad would like take my car seat, put it under the passenger console of his boat, when I was young, right? And under a year, and go fish the Mississippi River. and catch whatever drum, saugers, walleyes, that kind of stuff. So the bass fishing thing came along kind of like when I could finally, I guess at the time, like in fisherman was probably like my dad. He's a veterinarian and he worked as a emergency, like an ER clinic when he was in Illinois. So he worked really weird hours. And so he would record all the in-fishermans.
Oh, cool.
And then so I just freaking start throwing those bad boys in and just watching them on repeat.
Yeah.
So when you got to see all these different species that I'd never, caught or had experience with, you kind of got a vibe for what fishing was. Because to that point, it was like throw a bobber in a pond with a worm on it, or, pull a live bait rig for walleyes or whatever. So then like you start seeing bass fishing and you're casting stuff, right? You're doing some fun things. There's topwaters. What is this?
You're not sitting down for this.
Yeah. Like this is kind of cool. And I think that's kind of when, let's call it whatever, 6 years old probably when it really got going. And then it was like the older I got, I always appreciated that time going out with my dad, but my dad wasn't really like a bass angler. And then the more I got into it and the more I started following, BASS and FLW, it was kind of like, oh man, this would be really, really cool to do, like just to go catch bass. So I remember like getting my dad on board to go do it and, get grandpa on board and we'd go, on our cabin on whitefish, on the whitefish chain.
Yep.
And, just go bass fish out there. Or then when we'd go to Iowa to see grandpa, right, go to the farm pond and catch bass. And then it just kind of like, my dad just kind of kept fueling it. Like, if that's what you want to do, go do it.
So it was like, I can relate with that, I guess, because it kind of becomes your own thing that you kind of discovered.
Yeah.
Like, yes, fishing was introduced to you, but like bass fishing, there's kind of this, for me anyway, and I can probably relate with that, it was this new like mystical, endless world of discovery that I just immersed myself in and still haven't got out of.
Absolutely. Yep.
That's awesome, dude. So you got into bass fishing that way, and I guess how'd you get into, in fishermen, probably watching some tournaments, Bassmaster, FLW, as you mentioned.
100%.
But when did the tournament fishing thing start? Did they have because we had junior Bassmasters. That was like what we had, I guess, at the time. But
no, for me, it was, I think it was actually an Excel series on whitefish. I was 16, so I needed, I used my grandpa's boat to fish it. And that was like, and even at the time, I felt like I was still really green to the whole thing. But I'm like, oh man, it's a tournament and it's on a lake that I kind of know or I think I know. And I sucked, But it was cool because like my family was rolling around my dad's boat like they were a spectator, right, the whole day, like cool, watching and like
that's sweet.
That was kind of cool. But it was also awesome to like that scene of takeoff weigh in, right, for a 16-year-old kid, and especially when you're watching it on TV or reading magazines, all that stuff, to then like be there, and then for the guys that fished it to be as receptive to some punk 16-year-old kid rolling in and has no idea what he's doing, but guys talking to you, answering questions, like that was kind of the first real true taste of an actual tournament. And then from there it was like, how do I do more of this? Yeah. Right? How do I find like Tuesday or Wednesday nighters or any of that stuff? And growing up in the cities, there were ample opportunities for that type of tournament. So that's kind of the progression then, was like to those, Tuesday, Wednesday nighters, and then also sprinkling some just kind of whatever fit into the schedule of school and work and life going on,
Dude, that's sweet. And I've heard this from countless people that you're just a hell of an angler, and I'm looking forward to hearing some stories about you fishing with some pro anglers, because I think you probably spent some more time in the boat than with like pros than most people.
I would say
which
so.
Is pretty cool. I'd love to be a fly on the wall like during some of that.
Absolutely.
So, but I forget where I was going with that. Literally got lost in that transition there. But
fishing, tournaments, getting into tournaments.
Yes, I remember now. So, like, you're good enough to fish at a high level, and like you've got a business coat on a lot of the time, and I guess I feel like there's like people who love fishing. They're dealt this choice at some point in life. You know what I mean? That's like, do you want to keep, sleeping out of the back of your truck eating ramen and chasing endless credit card debt of pipe dream, or do you want to work in the industry? And so how did that all, like, because that to me is weird. Like, it'd be really hard for me to step away from like serious tournament fishing.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, because it was I went to school at Iowa State and helped kind of restart the fishing team there when I was going there. So it was cool, because then that was like FLW college fishing had just kind of started. That was when the rules early on were you and I would be a team, but you could keep 3 and I could keep 3. So we weren't truly a team.
Oh.
Yeah, it was a weird rule. So I never fished that, but the Under Armour college bass stuff, which was basically like sanctioned BASS stuff, that was happening. So I got to travel to a little bit of that. We got a little bit of money from the college to do that. So, to this point, I'd been fishing local stuff in Minnesota and, any other little derby I could get into. And then in college, I got to start fishing nationally, right? Like that was kind of the first eye-opening drive to Arkansas, Alabama, like roll in with 2 days of practice against a bunch of schools that have, they're 20 minutes from these lakes, and see how you hold up. And that was cool. That fueled the fire even more, right? Because there was, a little bit of success, some like, top 3s in some of those things, and just meeting a lot of these really cool dudes and getting a whole new appreciation for bass fishing, and also like a whole new mentality for how to fish like highland reservoirs, river systems that are unlike, like Arkansas River or something like that. But then while all that's going on, you're also in college, right? You realize, like, I'm trying to get an animal science degree, and I know at some point I'm going to need to make money because I got to pay back college.
The animal science degree, yep.
So, when the opportunity was presented to work in the industry, because, most of college into slightly, year out of graduating from college, I never had a real job. I worked in the fishing department at Gander Mountain, and I fished tournaments. And honestly, like most summers, I probably made more money fishing tournaments than I did working. And Metropolitan Mosquito Control.
Cool.
Shout out to my boss, Tim. He was a cool dude. He'd let me like take off early and have days off. Big fishing guy. All I had to do was like.
Bankston didn't do that.
Bankston would not do that. No, he would crack the whip. You gotta work this weekend for sure. We're short. Come on, banger.
Saving all the practice time for yourself, banger.
Yeah. Cheating the system. But when the opportunity came up to start working for FLW as a web editor, it was truly one of those moments where you're like, okay, I do want to fish tournaments. However, I now have a better understanding of the cost that would go into that. Boat, truck, right? Like I borrowed my dad's truck a lot to drive to those southern tournaments in college, and just the wear and tear, oil changes on stuff, like axles, bearing, any trailer issue known to man, right? So it just kind of like it sank in, and I'm like, all right, well, truly, if I want to be a part of this, if I want to keep living and breathing this opportunity to work for a tournament fishing organization, that's the deal, right? That's my end. I could keep scraping and clawing for years, right? And that dream of tournament bass fishing at a professional level might not ever come true. But here I have an opportunity to work at an organization and cover bass tournaments and interact with the pros on a daily basis, right? It's like pretty good consolation prize,
Amazing.
And you get a paycheck.
Yeah.
You get a guaranteed paycheck.
Yeah, dude.
So I don't have to worry about fighting, green fish, brown fish, and having them, mess with me and essentially take my money, right? Losing money to fish. I just roll around the country and learn more about bass fishing and talk to pros and still be a part of that. I still get to go to takeoffs. I still get to go to weigh-ins. Like, that was kind of really the make or break. But I think if I hadn't have had that college fishing experience to like see it more at a national level firsthand, I probably like maybe I don't make that decision then to work in the industry.
Sure.
You know?
Sure.
Because I think the fire would still be stoked so bad that like I need to do this.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until I kind of got that reality check of I don't want to say doing it, but just the travel and all that work and effort and practice days and, you know, rolling from one tournament to the next, because there were a couple of those where you leave, you know, X tournament, you roll in, you're now a day short on practice and you got to fish, and then you got to do, you know, schoolwork and all that, all that junk. That was probably, college was really the moment I think where it became pretty clear, like, man, if you got the opportunity to work in the industry, absolutely, because you can always come back to fish. Tournament fishing is always going to be there,
right?
So take this opportunity to learn and you know, I guess at least start a career, or see where it goes. Right at the time, I was like, they might fire me 2 months into this deal, right?
Were they pretty flexible, or was it kind of like you had to make some changes? With like,
I definitely had to make some changes, like from fishing.
Pretty strict, like they were pretty like.
No, it was just like covering tournaments. You know, working for FLW was very demanding on your travel, right? Like the amount of tournaments they did, and when I started, they also had the FLW, the National Guard Walleye Tour, and I was covering those too. That wasn't like on the water stuff, but you still had to be on site.
Sure.
So
you're traveling.
Yeah, you throw in whatever, let's say 6 Walleye Tour plus, let's call it 6 FLW Tour events. So there's 12 plus some, I guess at the time they would have been Ever Starts, then Rayovacs, now Toyotas, right? AAA stuff where you go to.
Damn, they're like, let's cut Kyle loose.
Yeah.
Last guy before him only got divorced twice.
Right.
Jesus.
Man, he'll be all right. He'll be okay. Yeah, and it really, like, because that, when, you know, me and Andy were fishing, that last year was the last year we fished together in, like, the team tournaments in Minnesota was the first year I worked at FLW, and I definitely could tell, like, performance-wise, like, I wasn't all there, right? Like, we were bass fishing. It was fun. I still love the tournaments, but it just, like, you always had other stuff in the back of your mind. And I feel like I let Andy down. And I say that as he's sitting on the couch over here, scrolling on his phone.
You guys were a force.
I mean, it was fun. It is fun. But those were some fun times. Like, whatever, 2009, what was it? 2009, 2011? That little window? Somewhere in there? Yeah. But, I mean, all we did was fish, right? Like I said, I was killing mosquitoes, Metropolitan Mosquito Control, fishing, like, weeknight tournaments whenever I could.
Sure.
And then occasionally stocking some shelves at Gander Mountain.
Love that. What's your best mosquito killing story? I bet there had to be something. Like a lady calling, like, thinking they're mosquitoes and they're bees or something. Or...
No, most people that called and complained about mosquitoes, there were actually a lot of mosquitoes. But like, we were supposed to do like you do a SWAT test. So like maybe they've adjusted it since then, but the technical thing was like you get out of your truck and you stand in their yard or wherever they call it, right? Like on the property somewhere for X amount of time. I think it was like a minute. You count basically how many mosquitoes you slap. So you just have to get bit by them. But so because they're attracted to, you know, you breathing, you existing, the same principle happens when you just let your vehicle run. So I just roll up in my truck, like in the driveway, just let it run and see how many gather around the windshield. But there are a couple, like that Watertown, Minnetrista area. Like people would be like, "Oh yeah, I think the mosquitoes are they're a lot worse than they normally are." And you roll up and dude, like you couldn't see through your windshield. Like if you let your truck idle for 3-4 minutes, mosquitoes. Like the truck would be running, I'd have the radio on, and you could hear that like,
Oh,
like, yeah, we should probably come out and kill all these mosquitoes for sure.
Yeah.
Like call a boss immediately. Like, yeah, we can spray these things.
Yeah.
But otherwise, it was pretty standard issue. You know, grunt work. There were like, if you don't like spiders, I'm not a big spider guy.
man.
I'm okay with them
No.
like being around.
Yep.
But when they get bigger,
Yeah, I don't like the big ones.
like them big dock spiders or whatever that live on like these
the
floating
wolf
docks.
ones?
Yeah, like
like.
no, yeah, dude. When they're like the size of your hand,
Yeah, dude.
hard pass.
Those things are. Yeah, I'm with you. I like the childhood spiders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the couple times you'd be like checking culvert areas in the ditches, right? Tall grass. It'd be like July, and you got this little stick with a cup that you dip in the water to like see how many mosquito larvae are in there. Kind of use it, knock the grass down. But like one time, I felt like some weight on my chest, and I looked down. There's this big like corn spider, them big black yellow things.
Oh.
Just on my chest. I made some sounds that were higher pitched than I could probably hit now. Did a lot of this.
Yeah.
Took off running. I was like, I don't know. There's probably mosquitoes in there. You have these little charcoal pellets that have like a growth hormone, so it makes the larva grow too fast and they explode.
Whoa.
You throw those in the water, right? I poured some in a cup, drove by, threw them out the window, just kept going. It's like, I'm not. Nope.
Why are they
that is
attracted
that
to
spider.
your vehicle?
The mosquitoes?
Yeah.
What am I? Is it carbon monoxide? Carbon
Dioxide.
What do we exhale?
Dioxide.
Dioxide.
They like
Yeah.
that. Oh, that's what a vehicle lets off.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
so
makes sense. Why, if you shut your garage door, you die.
Yes. Yeah, it's bad.
Because I just thought it was like the gases. I didn't know it was the carbon dioxide.
Yeah. That's a good way to if you ever roll up to a buddy's house and you're like, he wants to grill tonight, on Friday night we're gonna have a bonfire, but look how many mosquitoes are on my truck right now. It's a bad deal.
Yeah.
We're gonna go to the bar now.
Yeah.
Right? We're not outside. This is an inside thing now.
Yeah, because the smoke only blows one way.
That's right.
That's a fact. But getting back on that FLW train, so you got this new gig, you're riding that,
Yep.
traveling here, traveling there. You're web editor for starts, right?
Yep.
But you work your way up into you're like the zone of FLW
Yeah.
in a way.
Sure.
You Kyle Wood.
Yeah,
Don't
it
get me
kind
wrong.
of there was a point where we started doing more, online things, and for the group of guys we had working, it kind of boiled down to like who's okay with talking on camera, who's okay with, having someone sit down and shove a camera in your face and say something, or for our guys that were doing live coverage, who's okay with kind of communicating points to them. And there were a lot of us that did that. But really, the on camera, when we started getting into YouTube, I was like, I don't know, I'll do it. Right? I'd never done it before, but it sounded cool.
You're
You get to talk about
natural.
fishing.
You're
Yeah.
really good at it. So
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
But it was really, the funny part is it was kind of like, I was the only one that was, I'll try it, We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Worst case, I don't do it anymore.
right.
And then it just kind of kept snowballing from there. And Jody White, who still works there, like he chipped in, where he could, and then we had the podcast. So it kind of grew right as my time at FLW and then MLF kept going. Right,
Sure.
There were some other players that got pulled in, but yeah, it was really more, I volunteered
Sure.
as
Sure.
tribute. I'm like, yeah, throw me in. Let's see what happens.
Well, that's how that day 5 stuff came about. And day 5 was, if I'm not mistaken, the guy who wins the event.
Yep.
You would go film a show with them the next day, same lake, right?
Yeah, the whole principle was, okay, because at the time, live coverage, I guess we might have even been testing it at the time, but really, how do we show people more, like, pull the cloak back on what these guys are doing? Because during the tournament, pro angler is an entirely different guy 90% of the time than non-tournament guy, right? A lot of those dudes put a, like kind of get, pro talk. Man, I'd like to thank my sponsors, I'm out here, Vexus Mercury getting me up and down this pond, it was a good week, just blessed to be here. Right, very robotic, and they either don't talk a lot or it's like real generic. But that same guy, if you're just talking to him at like registration, he's just one of us, right? Mm-hmm. So the mindset was A, show the viewer, just give them more intel, more insight into what these guys were doing, and then B, also show what this angler is really like in a more relaxed environment.
Yep.
And that was Jesse Schultz and Jody White did the first one with Ray Hanselman on Okeechobee when he won. That was like the pilot. But, the idea, those guys kicked around, we talked about it, we're like, yeah, this is 100% we got to do it. It was really just like, how do we make this happen? Because we also had Circuit Breaker, right, where we pick a pro and follow them around, right? YouTube video, everyone has a YouTube channel now. Everyone films their tournament stuff, but like Circuit Breaker, again, that was like the first produced look inside of a pro angler's life to show, people what it means to be a pro angler, whether it's being away from your family, the highs, the lows, just things that happen on the road, trucks breaking down, boats breaking down, all that. So we were really trying to get into like the pre-live stuff and really kind of more produced YouTube stuff. Just how do we show our fans what actually goes on? Because I kind of thought, like, for me, that was like the biggest question I always had growing up, right?
Right.
Like, you see these guys fishing and you see them winning tournaments or, getting top tens, and it's cool, and you see a picture in a magazine, but like, what is David Fritz like? What is Brent Ehrler like outside of that?
Right.
And you didn't really know. Like, for a really long time, you had no idea. You could kind of make it up in your head.
People still don't, for some anglers.
Yeah, that's a very good point. But like, that's all we wanted to do.
Yeah.
Was just, how do we show the fans?
Love that.
A, how cool this angler is, or just if you want to get on board with their brand, great. But also, on the flip side, if you just want to know more about how they won the tournament, well, guess what? We're back on their hole. We're back on the juice. Probably won't catch one because they burned it to the ground. Like, that was 98% of them.
Really?
The spots were so torched that like getting a bite was, everyone was kind of surprised. You're like, oh my gosh, I got bit.
Was that the hard part about day 5? Is you weren't catching much, so you had to, I suppose, turned it into like more talking.
Yeah, it almost became like a really short form podcast, right? Like, that was kind of my job, was like, tell the story of the tournament win, also give people maybe some insight as to, what events that transpired that guy leading up to it, whether it was earlier career success or, things like that. And then, thank goodness, you have GoPro and you have, the TV footage that we could lace in there.
Sure.
Which kind of broke it up. So there really was no pressure to ever actually catch one.
Right.
Catching one was just a really nice bonus.
Yeah.
We already had fish catches, right? The dude already won the tournament. So no need to like dive deep into that. You got all that covered.
Right.
It's really just talk people through it and, yeah, just tell the story of what happened, and also try to tell the story of who, what, where, when, why of the tournament. Why this spot? Why this pattern? Why that bait? Why, how do you set up in current for this?
Right.
Jason Lambert on Kentucky Lake, right? Why are you doing what you're doing?
Yeah.
People need that. Now, a lot of times they're still pretty reserved, but you could usually get a couple nuggets out of them to learn something from.
Awesome was that?
Yeah, it was
like, what?
It was insane. And like, outside of following these guys around during the tournament, right? Shooting photos, and then, writing stories at night where you get to interview them. So you really get the full nitty gritty, and then to like go out and be in the boat with the guy that won. It just, it was kind of like a sensory overload.
Oh, I can only
imagine.
A way. I have so many questions. I'm getting like, the trickle down of the sensory overload just from that.
Yeah.
Are you ready to reel in your next home purchase or refinance? Supreme Lending's Dream Team can help guide you through the entire mortgage process, from pre-qualification to closing. They have a wide variety of home loan programs in their tackle box, including down payment assistance and first-time homebuyer options. Just ask me. I trusted Aaron Dagas, a bass fisherman just like you and me, and Supreme Lending's Dream Team to help finance my first home. Contact Aaron Dagas and the Dream Team today by scanning the QR code or giving them a call at 763-326-0677. That's 763-326-0677. Did I catch a 7 in there? Or visit their website, aarondages.supremelending.com. That's AARONDAEGES.supremelending.com.
Do you trailer your big outboard? Then you need the MyWedge motor support. MyWedge keeps even the heaviest motors safe and secure on the trailer. And talk about easy. Up with the motor, on with the MyWedge, back down and ready to roll. And MyWedge is built to last. It won't rot, it won't split, it won't fail. Guaranteed. Pop on MyWedge centering clips for lateral stability and you're good to go. MyWedge, security in a snap. To order yours, go to mywedge.com.
Hey guys, Aaron Teal here with Vocelka Fishing and Customs here, and excited to talk to you about my new signature series rod, the Puppet Master. My number one confidence technique is by far offshore power finesse fishing, so we've spent a lot of time and a lot of years creating the perfect bottom contact power finesse rod, specifically designed to fish 3/8 to 3/4 ounce football jigs, tubes, swing heads, dragging a swim bait on the bottom, and any bait that you need to manipulate with your hand and land that fish. This rod is perfect for it. The big thing that we found that was an issue with other rods is they were either too crisp and sensitive, where they were too fast, or they weren't quite sensitive enough and they had the right action. So what Dane built with this rod is the most sensitive bottom contact rod I've ever held in my hands. But the big thing is, on long cast, it's got the power to drive that hook home, but more importantly, it's got a parabolic action that's going to bend deep down in the rod to make sure that, let's say, football jig or goby tube isn't popping that smallmouth's mouth open and keeping that bait in the back of their head where it belongs, allowing you to have increased leverage and landing more bass. You're going to have to pry this rod from my cold dead hands. This is the Puppet Master. You can find it on VocelkaFishing.com or at Waypoint Angler Supply. Check them out. I have so many questions. What's the craziest thing you learned doing day fives? Like, what was the craziest thing you witnessed a guy do to win a tournament where you're like, really? Was there any of that, or was it all like, yeah, that makes sense?
I think a lot of times, honestly, I think maybe one of the craziest things is how the most common like community holes win tournaments, right? And that was the thing that always make local guys, because when I would ride around on the lake, a lot of times, to shoot photos during the event, we would hire camera boat drivers, and they were local dudes that live by there, fish BFLs or whatever it is, and those guys would always be so excited to see how the tournament was won. And I bet it was like half of the time guys would win it off of a community hole of some sorts. Now they may find like a sweet spot, if it's like a ledge, it might have been a little secondary drop off of it 100 yards away from that bigger ones were on. If there's 200 fish on the community school, there'd be 5 on this little thing. And you catch 2 of them, then, give it an hour and reload. And so it was like little subtleties like that, but like good fishing spots are good fishing spots, right? And I think that was maybe the biggest takeaway, because it didn't matter where you went in the country. A good spot, like if that's a community hole, you're like, well, there's probably a top 10 coming off it because those fish like being there. Like that was maybe the wildest thing. I can't really remember like a real specific instance of like a bait or a technique. Well, I should say the Magnum Spoon, Kentucky Lake. Like I was there for that tournament. That was insane. Alabama rig was like slightly before I started, but I got in on some of that, chaos of people trying to find Alabama rigs and make Alabama rigs and 10XD. Rob Newell was at that tournament that Phil Marks won on Rayburn. But like big crankbaits, like some of that stuff where like you see it for the first time in an event and it wins. This is insane. This is gonna change the game. And then like the chaos that ensues from pros like dealing baits in the parking lot, at their tailgate. Like
That's cool.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. So, that'd be like a really far right, extreme example of like the specific baits. But I think the biggest takeaway would be the just community holes. They're good spots. And it was insane how many times a guy would win an event and you'd hear locals in the parking lot at weigh-in like, oh man, I've been fishing that spot for 15 years, man. That I didn't learn anything from this. But like, well, you could have, because they probably used a different technique or something like that.
Fished it different.
Yeah.
It's a community hole, but
You drag a jig, they de-skinned a hollow belly and rolled a swim bait through it or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
That's badass, dude. What's your most memorable time with day 5? Like with who and what lake and how?
Oh man. So probably first would probably be Brian Latimer on Seminole.
Okay.
It was cool because his son came.
Okay.
And so we had like his boat that we're in with his son, right? So we're trying to film, but his son's just being a kid, right? And I can't remember how old he was at the time, like 4 or 5, right? But he's like cutting worms up and like, stepping on rods. But we're trying to like have a, semi-serious, thing and have some fun. But we also caught him pretty good too.
Okay.
Which was pretty, and he was flipping grass, like foil. And the whole time he was flipping braid. So when we were pulling rods out, I'm like, you got anything with fluorocarbon? He's like, yeah, I rigged 2 up. I never really flipped them. I'm like, you mind if I flip that fluorocarbon around? It was just 20-pound fluoro.
Why'd you ask for the fluoro? Because you knew he'd been flipping braid for 4 days?
Just see like,
yeah,
what if, right?
Yeah.
Dude, they wanted the floor. Like the floor, I got way more bites than him. But the best part of, if you watch the first fish catch, I think it's the first or the second fish catch I had, on the GoPro that's on the console, I flip in. So the hard part for me was like, when I started working at FLW, I didn't fish as much. I didn't have a boat for a while, and then it was like winter, or you'd be in these like weird, it's February. I've been ice fishing for, 3 weeks or whatever. And then you jump in a bass boat and you start flipping grass. You're like, well, I got to kind of get my bearings back. But in that Seminole one, like I flip in this clump, I hop it up, and like I don't feel the weight again. I kind of pull up and it pulls back. And I'm like, what the hell? I start reeling. Fish spit it. So I'm reeling up to the surface, and this like 3.5 pounder comes up and boils under the. It chased the bait all the way up to the top, boiled under it. So on the GoPro, you see me. Brian's running the trolling motor. He's talking about something, right? I'm sure it's really deep and intricate. And here's my dumbass. Look, you see this boil. I look at the camera like, did anyone see that? Like, not only did I shake this fish off, I reeled it away from it. And then it tried to eat it, so I flipped it back in there and caught it. But I'm like, woo, all right. Hey, just full disclosure for everyone. I remember telling Rob, who was filming it, I'm like, I did just shake that fish off. So I knew he was there, but man, I felt like an idiot. But we caught some fish. That one was really fun just because we caught fish. Brian's a super cool guy. Things just kind of went really good. Probably my second favorite would be Justin Atkins when he won the Cup on Murray.
Okay.
Right. He was throwing that I'm a little stick over cane piles and a big stick. But
I like that bait.
It's a good bait. Really good bait. So you win the Cup, right? And woo, yeah, big check, confetti. Then there's usually a fairly decent sized party.
Oh yeah.
That night. And you know, everyone involved got after it, right? And yeah, me and Justin had as Zona would say, we had a TIME, you know. But so then what used to happen is for the magazine, the photo shoot for the cover, right? Justin holding the cup.
Yep.
Would happen the next morning.
Oh.
And it'd be like a sunrise shoot.
Oh.
So they're like, Justin, we need you at the ramp at 6:30.
Oh.
He's like, all right. Like, Kyle, because they knew we were going to shoot day 5. Can you make sure he's there? No problem. I'm on it. So we wake up, we get there. No one's in great shape, but it's foggy. That whole tournament, right? The cup is in August. It'd been blue skies, humid, gross every day. But now it's foggy. And Justin looks at me, he's like, dude, we could wreck him right now. So now I'm over here, like, basically trying to convince our design department to not do the photo shoot. Let's reschedule it for another time because we're going to make the best day 5 that's ever been filmed. We're going to catch 35 pounds. Whatever. It's going to be insane. We're going to catch big ones all day long. Realistically, probably 20, which might be the biggest bag ever caught on day 5. But they did the shoot real quick. We got rolling. We roll up to the first spot. I think Justin catches a striper. Then he throws out in front, dumps like an 8. I mean, this thing came up. It was like Shamu, like through the top water. We're like, we got to go to the next pile. So we run to the next pile. I throw out, I catch like a 5. We go to the next pile. I catch like a 5 1/4.
Jesus.
And then like immediately fog gone, sun's out, bite just done. Like we were like on the cusp of the best bite ever, and it was on top, right?
On top.
And then just hard stop. We were so jacked too. We were like, we're gonna wreck them. But that one was cool because it was top water. It was Justin, who again is a really cool guy, and it was fun. They're all kind of fun in their own quirky, weird ways, but like those from a fishing and the guy in the boat perspective are really good. And also anyone with John Cox would be a top 3 all day.
Do you have any cool John Cox stories? I've heard some wild ones.
I guess one of them, I don't know if I can totally share, but maybe the craziest John Cox story I have is when he won the cup on wherever the heck we were. Wheeler? Yeah, it's on Wheeler. When he was up in the back of the creeks. So I rode around with him on day 1 of practice. And again, like I did a lot of practice ride-arounds with guys, right? Me and Jody, we'd jump in the boat for 2-3 days with guys. And
cool.
And a lot of times you wound up in the boat because we would kind of cherry pick, what guy we did on which lake. Mm-hmm. So you'd kind of put the odds in your favor for like a decent finish. And John, I did day 1 of that tournament, and that was back when you could have an immediate family member in the boat with you for practice. So his brother rode along. So it's me, John, and his brother. And John is like the John you see on TV or on the internet is John in real life. Just happy, never a dull moment. Even if he doesn't catch him, he's still giggling and laughing and like he's just happy to be bass fishing, right? So, we spend like the first hour of the morning. John's trying some stuff way up the river, some main river stuff, like not what I would consider John Cox stuff, right? He's like trying to throw a swim bait and some current and just checking some kind of weird things. And you get the vibe he's not really liking what's going on. So we start looking in those little feeder creeks off of the main river. The first when you go in, there's like shad everywhere. You see bluegills. There's just stuff. There's life. And he hadn't caught one, but he got kind of quiet. And for like the next 2 hours, we just rode around in those creeks. And like, he never really said a word. I'm shooting pictures. I usually try not to ask a question, even though like John and I have a good relationship. I would feel comfortable asking him, but it was kind of one of those moments where you're like, some stuff's happening right now. Like John's processing information and you could like see the wheels turning. And we'd go in another pocket and he may go another 50 yards further than he did in the previous one, right? And he's starting to piece all this together. And finally, he pulls the trolling motor up. We had just kind of like hopped over a fallen down tree. Pulls the trolling motor up, slams it down, sits down, and looks at me. And I don't know, I think for the sake of John, I won't say exactly what he said, but basically he was thinking about not fishing the entire time and maybe some sexual things that he asked if, I'd ever tried a position out. So here you, John Cox, for 2 hours, I'm thinking this guy's just piecing things together, right? This guy is dialed. The whole time in his head, he was thinking
about sex.
He was thinking about sex, and he was thinking about also, what was it? Oh, what other breakfast sandwiches at Bojangles were really good. The best part is, then he goes on to win the frickin' cup, doing exactly what he was doing the day. So he was absorbing that information.
It was almost just unconscious from the sound.
Yeah. But it was like he was robotic in doing what he was doing. And then the first words out of his mouth to me were sex related and then Bojangles related. It's like, okay, all right, cool.
Legend.
You're the man, John.
That dude is a whisperer.
Yeah. I feel bad for any bass within casting distance.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like if bass fishing was a Catholic church, he'd be St. Cox.
He would be St. Cox.
He'd be St. Cox for sure.
Absolutely.
St. Cox. Who's the funniest pro that you've fished a day 5 with?
Ooh. Man, funniest pro.
John Cox, maybe?
It's got to be John Cox. They're all... me and Bradley Hallman had some good times, too. He's a pretty fun dude. I think a lot of guys still were, very... Just people are uncomfortable with the camera getting shoved in your face, right?
For sure.
That kind of puts people into, news reporter mode where you kind of get...
them in a shell.
Yeah, you get a little robotic, but... Yeah, it'd probably be John, just because, like I said, it doesn't matter. Camera, no camera, he's the same dude. He's having fun. He's loving life.
Is there anybody that you didn't enjoy day 5 very much?
Honestly, probably probably one of the tougher from a tournament perspective, but also just the personality would be, now why am I blanking on it? Because I was just thinking about it. You want on Beaver Lake, super high water. Johnny McCombs. Johnny McCombs was probably super nice dude. If you don't really know him, it's kind of he might shank you, kind of that vibe. So the whole time you're don't move too quick or anything, that was probably, but like I said, he was a cool dude. It just, his addiction, his drug addiction before that kind of got him out of bass fishing.
Was that the buzzbait guy?
Yeah. Beaver Lake came up freaking whatever it was, 20 feet, throwing a buzzbait around.
This guy was pros said that he was the best fisherman they'd ever fished against, right?
Then he kind of took a hard left.
Yeah, wasn't it heroin or something?
Yeah, I think it was a lot of hard drugs. You're right. A lot of the guys in Alabama, where he ran, Swindle. He's the dude.
Swindle said he's the GOAT.
Yep, and he's a very naturally talented angler. Just other things kind of got in the way.
Well, yeah, didn't his shit get stolen or whatever? And he's all whatever, I just need a buzzbait and
Yeah. I mean, it was a crazy.
This guy was just.
Yep, but he was the man for the job on Beaver Lake that year. But yeah, that was probably I don't want to say the toughest or one guy I didn't like. It was just kind of a weird mindset for me because I don't know.
You didn't want to get
stories for I didn't want to get shanked, first of all. And then second, you're trying to tell people about this dude that had these issues and like all this stuff and how he got to where he is now. Because a lot of people didn't really know. It was just kind of like Johnny McCombs came out of nowhere when he really didn't, right? But you got to
So you had to
tell viewers about that. Yeah, and it was just kind of uncomfortable for me more than Johnny. Johnny was like,
well, yeah,
I'll
you
talk
do
about
FLW,
whatever.
not Cold Case Files. You know
Exactly.
what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, not yet anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All in good time. All in good time. But that dude, like, I'm sorry, that's like, that's one of the more fascinating dudes I've heard about, actually.
Yeah.
Even though he was your most boring day 5. Like,
it kind of was like, it was just like and he doesn't talk a whole lot. That's probably why it registers higher on the worst day 5s. It was just hard to get words out of his mouth, which, as you know, when you talk to people,
can be difficult.
words coming out of their mouth is actually a good thing.
Oh, it's amazing. You're natural. I'd say somebody didn't love him enough when he was a kid.
Man, it might be. It could be.
I
That
reckon.
way. I
But
reckon so. Mm-hmm.
it's too bad because, man, I heard he could throw a buzzbait better than anybody south of the Mason-Dixon and north, potentially,
Man.
if Andy Walls didn't exist.
If not for Walls, he'd be up there.
If it wasn't for Walls, he'd be running both ends of that Mason-Dixon. Mm-hmm. Well, speaking about Walls, I've had a good time getting to know Walls, and like what's cool about each angler you talk to and get to know is there's a lot of ways to skin the cat
Absolutely.
in this sport, and it seems like there's getting to be a few less ways to skin the cat.
Right.
But I guess getting into like fishing style a little bit. I mean, I heard you talking about some big Japanese crawlers tonight. You've had this. I want to segue into so many subjects right now, but we're just going to get into fishing style. We're not
Fishing
going to get
style.
into mooch minnows, nothing yet.
Sure. Not yet.
Kyle Wood, fucking going to the lake tomorrow. Fishing style. What's his first 5 rods on the deck? Any lake you choose.
Any lake I choose, probably have a frog, like a half-ounce Texas rig. Probably, honestly, now, like me now versus me in college, it's like 2 totally different answers.
That's a good thing.
Yeah,
It means
like,
you evolve. as an
now,
angler.
because now I'd have like a DT10 probably tied on, where like before I didn't like that offshore stuff as much, or if I did, it was like grass related. Like I wanted to flip some stuff. You know, I wanted braid. I wanted to get after it. I'd probably have same thing, a half-ounce jig. Actually, probably be like a 3/4 ounce Texas rig, half-ounce jig, frog, DT10, and some sort of like well, now it's probably a VMC hybrid swim bait jig and a freeloader. But you know, prior to that, let's say like a chicken or something. That'd probably be like starting 5 any lake, because I know I could fish some hard stuff offshore. Any dock, piece of wood, grass that got in my way, I could do something with it. That'd probably be it. But like college me, forget the DT and forget the chicken, would just double down on another jig. Be like a 3/4 and a half-ounce jig and a 3/4 and a half-ounce Texas rig.
I
plus
respect
plus
that.
the frog.
I like that.
I might even drop one and add 2 sizes of frogs. Yeah. So
You said that because Andy's here. It's not fair.
yeah.
Yeah.
They throw the biggest frog you got, they'll bite it. Yeah.
I respect that. Mm-hmm. You and Andy are cut from similar cloths. Then
We
in that
are.
regard.
And it was funny, like to your point about talking to different anglers and kind of getting to know their styles, or like, you know, what their background is. Because Andy, you know, coming from Brainerd, had a totally different mindset on like an approach to tackle than I did in the cities, right? Like, because I remember one of the first things we talked about was fishing Tonka. And I'm like, dude, it to me was the only lake that I had encountered in the state of Minnesota where like line size on a jig, you could take the same jig and adjust your line size down or up and get results. You know, like you don't have to do it. You roll up to Gull Lake, you know, you just You throw 50-pound braid with a 3/4 ounce jig, skip it under dock, flip coontail with it, whatever. They'll bite it. Same thing with Leech Lake. Forget it. You can have 10 rods with 50-pound braid, tie a bunch of jigs and Texas rigs on it, and they're going to eat it. And then you roll the Tonka, you might need to think about it a little bit, And then that was kind of where we really, those things we each knew, those little nuances, right? I got a little more comfortable just maybe skipping that heavier weight around when I think I need to downsize because Andy, because it came from a trusted source. That kind of, I think, is the thing to me. When you get to know guys, and if you have confidence in something, I may not, but it doesn't. Now I feel better about trying it.
Right,
and I think that's kind of the cool thing of your circle of bass heads, right?
Yep.
You can hear it from some dude on the internet, and you're like, well, I don't know, maybe. But when you hear it from the horse's mouth.
When you hear it from Andy, you're like, wow, there's something to that.
I should probably try that. Yeah, that could actually work.
Right.
And coming back, not to get back on the FLW thing, but that was the really cool thing, for me as an angler, to I think grow, was just getting to experience, these guys in their element. Watching Andy Morgan make on the water decisions from, rolling a spinnerbait around to go flip a jig up some wood up a river, those instinctual things. And watching how those guys trust their gut so much on limited practice. So now to roll in and just show up to a tournament with zero practice, you're like, okay, yeah, it's no big deal. If I'm feeling it, I'm feeling it. It's going to happen, right? That's kind of that was one of the cool things about, that job. But also, again, trusting those guys. And then even, you come back to your small circles. So, okay, not everyone gets to hang out with, tour level pros, but you have buddies who are good at catching fish, so you could pick up those little nuggets from them.
Absolutely.
And add it into your arsenal and become a better angler because of it.
That's a big deal. And not to cut you off, but I do have to pee.
That's fine.
Okay,
let her rip.
We'll be back. Yeah, fishing's actually changed a lot since I started bass fishing.
Dude, it has.
When you look back in time, it's crazy. And I'm curious your perspective on it. I wasn't going to get in too much into we don't ride the what do you call it? The soap operas, the dramas of the world. But I'm curious your perspective because you cover more people than, you work with pros. I mean, you work for Rapala, Crush City Line. I mean, you're on the cutting edge of the sport.
Yeah, I'm all for technology, but your point about it changing from when we got into it, it's insane, and it's kind of it's almost like a sensory overload in a way, because it kind of seems like it, forward facing's actually been around for a little while, but until the last 3-4 years, it hasn't really gotten the attention that it deserved, right? I remember when side imaging came out, and hearing from buddies that had it, dude, you got to go check out those rocks on Medicine, or you gotta go look at whatever. I found an ice house on Waconia with it. There's a little rock spot with some milfoil on it, and I always knew if you threw off to the left side of the little point, you'd get that's where the school was, but I had no idea why. Right? Turns out there's half an ice house sunk on the. But for years I'm I don't know, dude. You just line it up and throw a little left to where you see the milfoil, and you'd catch one,
dude.
Right? So it forever I was totally fine not knowing that existed.
Yeah.
Right? I just knew little left, you're good. And then, so, and to think that was insane, right? Tennessee River guys, they're finding schools of fish. All they did was idle and practice. They didn't do anything else. So, I really think forward-facing sonar isn't. I mean, it's a big advancement, but it's really not that insane, right? We broke that barrier with side imaging and 360, So
Very much so, I think.
this is just the next natural progression in the sport, and it's making it a lot more fun for some, right? Especially like if you're getting into it. Think about like taking a kid crappie fishing through the ice now.
It's been confirmed. Aliens from another planet have landed on Earth. Sources say there's been 2 confirmed landing points for these extraterrestrial beings, one being Japan, and also, unexpectedly, in Minnesota at Waypoint Angler Supply, a local tackle shop on Lake Minnetonka. With the ever-expanding universe, it's no surprise that there are other planets out there that also share our love for the sport of bass fishing. And to Earth's surprise, this latest visit came from extraterrestrial fishermen light years away and many innovations ahead when it comes to fishing equipment. Some hypothesize these beings came from the planet of Naboo, matching up with Mayan folklore dating back thousands of years with fishing equipment ahead of their time. It has been confirmed they left things never seen before by an Earth-born bass. Waypoint Angler Supply is the premier space station in the bass galaxy and has tackle that could previously only be found in Japan or the planet of Naboo. The Waypoint ship is full, but we don't know when the astronauts from Naboo will be back. So hurry in to Waypoint Angler Supply today and stock up on that Area 51 Planet of Naboo JDM good before your buddy is whooping that sweet ass of yours. Stop into their store on Lake Minnetonka or visit their website, waypointanglersupply.com. That's waypointanglersupply.com. In the month of August, use the code GALAXY2401 to save 20% on your next tackle binge. Teal's Bass Galaxy is now offering intergalactic merchandise. That's right, we got apparel now, baby. Check out our website. We got a variety of apparel, hats, bucket hats, sweatshirts, t-shirts, all the finest goods. So stop on our website, tealsbassgalaxy.com, click on the apparel tab, and start looking good, baby. Most tournament anglers and guides are not covered fully or properly. Most insurance policies don't cover exposure due to tournaments and guiding. Taking the chance of using the wrong insurance gives the insurance company an out when settling a claim. How will the insurance company know that you're fishing tournaments or guiding? Well, social media is their number one resource. And guess what? They use it. Lake Country Insurance offers one of the only products that can cover both tournament and guiding use in your vessel. Anglers don't seem to hesitate spending $50,000 to $100,000 for a boat. Why risk that large asset, all because you wanted to save a few extra shekels? Are you nuts? Call the folks at Lake Country Insurance today and make sure you have the proper coverage for your boat before the unexpected happens. Call 612-285-3113 today or visit their website, lcisagency.com. That's lcisagency.com. Yeah.
Like, we're going to catch some fish.
Yeah.
We're not just going ice fishing. We're going to go catch something. May not be crappies.
These are real fish. This isn't that Nintendo 64 shit you're playing or
well,
PlayStation 8 or whatever.
Whatever kids are on these days. Yeah. But yeah, put the game down. Here's a cool video game, that we're going to go play and we're going to catch fish. So I love that aspect of, it can get people more excited about fishing. I understand there's a price, that it costs to get into this, but also when people have it, like I think everyone's looking at, it shows me fish. I'm going to find fish. But man, if you start paying attention to just like what's going on, like whether you use it to see where the brake line is or the weeds or the whatever, like, oh, that fish followed my thing and I shook my bait. I jerked my jerk bait twice and he left. But when I popped it once, he came closer, right? Like dialing in those cadence. I'm not really using it to actually catch that specific fish, but I'm using it to learn the nuances of what I'm doing to catch more fish throughout the day or throughout the rest of the summer or year or my lifetime, whatever it is.
Right.
Like the mood of the fish that day. And I think that's the big thing. And I know, there's podcasts and guys talk about it, but I still think it's one of those low key forward facing sonar things that no one's really talking about, is like the information you get for it. If you truly want to be a better angler, forward facing sonar, you're going to catch some fish utilizing it for sure. Like looking at them, watching them follow a thing. But you're also going to learn like what not to do that day. Or you get in an area and you're like scanning around and you just don't see life, right? Those parts of the lake where you're like, God, it doesn't feel right. And you haven't seen a little ball of bait swim by, or you haven't seen like perch scurry on the bottom. Maybe I should go somewhere else more quickly than I would have, because everything else you can see visually looks really good.
Yeah.
Those pencil reeds look good. I could see that weed point out there. There's buoys around. I know there's rocks or whatever. Like, well, if it's just dead, if I haven't seen anything on forward-facing sonar for like 200 yards, I'm probably going over there.
Yeah.
I'm going to move.
Right. Yeah, dude. And it's crazy. It seems like there's a lot of polarization with it. And I guess, do you feel like there should be limitations to it? Do you think like the sport's getting like out of hand?
So I think fishing tournaments as a whole, it's a weird sport because you can't really compare it to anything else. You know what I mean? Like golf, everyone plays on the same course. The hole is the same distance for everyone.
Yeah.
Where like the hole that we're chasing around on cab, different for everyone. Different part of the lake, different water clarity, whatever. Wind's blowing more in one section than it is in the other. Like, so I think the sport, you can't look at it like, everyone's got to use the same bat like you do, or there's bat regulations like in the MLB, or car restrictions like in NASCAR. Like I get it. Everyone's gonna have a different boat, right? Even like I got an aluminum, you got a fiberglass. You know what I mean? Like there's differences there. So when it comes to electronics, I think it's really hard to say that there needs to be a defined limitation on it, because there's not really a limitation other than like a minimum horsepower and a maximum. Right. In a lot of instances, there's not really regulations that say
can only have X amount of transducers.
Yeah. But I think at the professional level, I could see the argument for limiting it so everyone has the same stuff. Like, I don't even want to say leveling the playing field, because it still won't, right? Heck, even forward-facing sonars changed the game a little bit, but you look at, tournaments, that one on Hartwell, where you couldn't use any imaging.
You mean
or not Hartwell? Wasn't it Hartwell?
No, it was Georgia. Lanier. TAA.
Yes. Well, dudes that are really good at catching fish still caught fish. So it's not the end all be all. But I could see
at the spawn. Just kidding. But like kind of.
I could see at the pro level potentially, like I could see the argument for a maximum amount of transducers or maximum amount of screens, because this is getting a little out there. And for, again, like we want people to keep doing this. So if I'm looking at Brian Schmidt with 4 graphs on his console and 3 up front, and I don't know how many live scope deucers sticking on that thing, but let's just assume it's 4, potentially 5. That's a lot of coin. Oh, and also
$60,000 or something.
Also, you have to you got to buy a boat.
Yeah.
To put that stuff on.
Yeah.
And a motor and a trailer and
battery setup for that has to be.
You need a lot of juice.
Yeah, a lot of juice. Solar panels off the fucking back.
Dude, really? Like for the top of the motor?
Yeah, big old panel.
That'd be dope.
Big old Tesla panel.
Oh, or like the back deck.
Make the whole back deck.
It's like C deck, but it's just solar panels.
And then they LED light it up and make it change colors. Dude. And fucking sell it to bass fishermen.
I'd bump it.
It syncs up with the music.
I'd be so down with that. So yeah, I could see it at that level. I don't like I want people to want to go fishing, right? I want people to learn how to catch more fish. And the only downside that I see right now with forward-facing sonars, I think it's just putting people off from the idea of wanting to go fishing because, well, I got to buy a $3,000 thing to put on my boat to even catch a fish. Well, no, you don't. Like, so I think some limitations at the pro level wouldn't be bad. Mm-hmm. But I don't know that you can necessarily do it because, like I said, I just don't think there's not a whole lot of things that you can really, like, regulate because not everything's equal. Like, that would be the only rule, really, in...
4 screens, 4 transducers, I think levels the playing field pretty good because you're going to have guys who have to pick and choose a little bit.
Sure.
You have to choose, like,
add or delete
360
things.
or not, or through hull or not, you know,
right.
And it's like you can stack it however you want, and it's going to give guys the advantage they feel that they have, but you can't always compensate for your weaknesses and exit your advantage then.
Yeah.
Not to overthink it or anything.
No.
But I guess to me, to appease everybody, that would be I think a pretty down the middle compromise.
Yeah.
But if you're asking me if I really care, I really don't. Tell me what the rules are. Tell them what the rules are. I'm going to watch bass fishing. I'm going to do bass fishing, and that's just my thought process on it all. But
also, I do want to say for the record, and, you know, for, you know, maybe the couple of people that would watch this or listen to it and actually care, but people are like, oh, man, this forward-facing sonar is making professional fishing so boring. Look, man, I have watched a lot of dudes bass fish in person on the lake right next to them. It is boring.
Yep.
Fishing is boring. It doesn't matter if you're staring at a screen. Yeah, to watch. Yeah. I mean, it can be boring also just fishing sometimes.
Can be.
But, yeah, so I think people are like, I don't like that they're using that argument to, like, go against forward-facing sonar. Because it's not true. It was just as boring in 1986 as it is now if you watch someone bass fish or just fish in general.
Well, it's like I've said this before on the podcast, but so you're telling me you'd rather watch, you know, Jason Christie catch 8 pounds flipping the bank all day than Koya catch 30?
Oh, dude.
No. I'm picking the 30.
All day, every day. I'm picking
Jason
the 30.
Christie flips bank, catches 30. I'd rather watch that.
I want to see it.
Yep.
Yeah.
I want to see that guy in his shining moment. That's like what it's about. But to me, the real viewership experience, and I'd probably beat this to a dead horse on the podcast, is being able to, A, choose who you watch and 4-box that shit like NFL Red Zone.
Yep.
And B, show the graph. I feel like if you wanted to turn that into, I guess, a boring experience into a fun one, watching Robert Gee forward-facing sonar at Toledo Bend I mean, it's not like he was winning the event, but just to watch how he would,
100%.
I mean, like, I paid money.
100%.
Good money.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like the organizations are, like, I feel like they don't see that. And I guess I see such a profit-driving revenue with that.
And I think they're stuck a little bit in some contractual things of, you know, multi-year deals signed with X brand or Y brand.
That makes sense.
But now you got, like, you know, you got to deal with Lowrance, but everyone on your live show for 4 days is running garments, right? Because they're in the top spots. You're not, the organization isn't picking the people. It's just the guys that are doing well have garments, or, you know, Humminbird and everyone's running Lowrance, whatever it is. Like, I think there's a little bit of, like, politicalness there that the organizations are just trying to kind of sift through and restructure that. I definitely could see that changing, you know, next year out. Like, I think they'll get around, because I think you do see it a lot better this year than it has been. But yeah, really the capabilities, like making sure the guys, everyone that's fishing, your forward facing unit should have the ability for like an HDMI out. So also if you're a electronics company and you have a graph that doesn't have that capability, it should have that. You should make it easy.
You might learn the hard way this year.
Yes.
And if I've got a contract with somebody and we're looking to elevate the game, like I'm looking to renegotiate that contract, and here's why. And this is going to benefit you and everybody.
Right.
And, and it just, I don't understand. It seems like fishing is very behind, and maybe it's because the money's not there.
I think that's a lot of it.
That makes
Definitely.
sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Money talks, money helps. Like, again, everyone thinks, the bass fishing industry is this giant monster, and really it's not, in the scope of, you watch a guy win whatever the heck a PGA Tour win is, a couple mil, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good amount.
We're giving away $100,000
Still.
Yeah, and those guys also paid $65,000-$70,000 in entry fees plus travel
To try to win one.
Yeah. Oh, and they also had to buy their boat.
There's only 10 events and 100 anglers.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So when you start peeling those layers back on it, it's
Oh, and Joey Fuentes wins 2 of those, so yeah.
yeah. Oh, sorry.
Sorry. Good job, Joey.
Well done.
But Crush City, dude.
Oh yeah.
What? Like, you are the man behind the mask of Crush City, and I know you're a humble dude, so you won't take all the credit. And it wasn't all you, but you're a big part of them baits, dude. How cool is that?
Yeah, it's pretty wild. It's pretty insane. Like, I about passed out when I started with Rapala, and they, showed the idea of this project, and like, okay, here's what you're working on. You're like, well, that sounds terrifying, right? Sounds absolutely terrifying. Yeah. We're Rapala. We're gonna do soft plastics. Like, got it.
And you're the guy.
Yeah.
Don't fuck this up, Kyle.
Yep.
Is that what it felt
and
like?
And then the door just shut. Like, okay, I'll be in here trying my best.
Oh, don't worry. You're not on this alone. I give you Jacob Wheeler, Dustin Connell, Seth Fighter.
Not Seth. He's Z-Man.
Oh, yeah.
I wish. Maybe soon, Seth.
I give thee Patrick Walters.
No, he's a Zoom.
Fuck.
Downtown Bob Downey.
I give thee Kyle Welcher.
Welcher?
Yeah,
oh, yeah.
baby.
Yep.
Dude, you put that cleanup craw on the back of an untamed tackle, breacher jig or ace jig, game over.
They can't not eat it.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
So, you get summoned to this new mission. You're like, the last guy to do this was Trigger X, and he's no longer.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
Remember?
Like, does the market? They obviously know we've been in soft plastics before, and it wasn't great.
You're like, okay, we're gonna try to not be like Gulp this time.
Yep. We're gonna more focus on stuff, action, less stuff, right? Make sure it's dialed. Make sure our colors are good. Make sure we got a good story, for marketing, and roll, and that's pretty much. And
that's the model now, though. It's quality over quantity. You got private equity buying everything, everybody, slashing this, cutting that. The beauty's in the details, my friend.
100%. It was, it was kind of, and, there's some luck there. Like, did we think Wheeler was going to win on Gunnersville right away? No. Did we assume he was probably going to win a tournament in the next 3 years when we started this project? Yeah, probably, right? Odds are pretty good. Guy he just wins. So
he's real good.
But the fact it happened that quick was kind of like, oh, crap. And then, let alone signing DC, for this season. And then, let me just win Toledo.
Yep.
Right?
Let me just win. Where the fuck was it? Oh, Lay,
Redcrest. Yep. Wheeler. Santee. Oh gosh, God. Oh,
Moochmouth.
freeloader. Stop. Moochmouth.
Oh, Bronco bug.
Ah.
Oh, cleanup crop. Oh, BLT.
Tasty BLT. Yeah, it's been cool. It's been really fun too to see Rapala, put a lot more focus into the bass world too, right? Like something that's so near and dear to my heart. Obviously, our pro staff, right, is a collection of really good guys in the industry. Obviously, not all of them are on Crush City, but just Rapala brand as a whole. To see that migration into soft plastics and like our whole mantra this whole time has been for Rapala, right? For our hard baits, it's that legendary action. We wanted to bring that legendary action into soft plastics, right? Like we knew they couldn't suck because we had some issues with Trigger X, right? Like, so when the target's that small, you got to aim true, right?
Yeah.
And we made sure we did everything we could to make sure, the baits did what they were supposed to. We had the colors they needed, and then turn them loose and see what happens.
Walk me into like the room working with like Wheeler, with some of those guys developing the highest end baits and like
Wheeler, dealing with Wheeler is like probably every bass fisherman's fantasy in terms of like the information you get in any given conversation. However, the dude is all over the place. You'll have a 2-hour long conversation on the phone, and it's probably a couple days a week, that we talk. But we're talking about new baits. Then we're talking about the conditions on a lake. He drove over a bridge on some lake he's never fished, and he thought, well, maybe I could do this. And then you get a breakdown of the conditions and how you'd probably fish it. And then you kind of come back around to like, oh yeah, he ate some really good food last week, blah blah blah. You know what I mean? Like, it's just so there's so much going on in that dude's brain. But every time he talks about fishing or an action or a little detail, trimming this, take off 2 millimeters here, see what the action does, or vice versa. Like probably the coolest part of Wheeler is the guy is very methodical in what he does. Like he's got a pool at his house now, or I guess whatever, the one he's lived in for the last few years now. But like most of the reason he got the pool was to look at stuff underwater. He wanted to know exactly what things are doing. The dude was trying to rig up an active target unit off the side of his pool so he could watch it. Like, you can visually see it in the pool, but he wanted to understand how that transmitted to forward-facing sonar. Like, the guy's, it's his profession, right? So a lot of people are probably like, well, yeah, he should be that dedicated.
most
but
aren't.
There's a lot of guys that aren't, for sure. There's a lot of guys that aren't. So, yeah, it's a trip getting that level of knowledge thrown at you on a daily basis. It sometimes you're like, dude, I gotta call you back. I can't process this.
That's
right
crazy. Yeah.
This is too much. But the other cool thing about Jake is he's really, myself, Steve Gibson is one of our engineers. Marco, he's our designer. Like, so the three of us, if we look at something and we say, this isn't good enough. This isn't good enough to even show him. And then I tell him, hey, those samples we were going to send you, we're going to do a revision. We'll get them to you here in a couple weeks. And here's why. He's like, awesome. Great. Like the trust he has back in us that we're not sending him just stuff to look at, like he knows when he gets it, we're probably 80% of the way there. And then he can kind of make those little, tweaks and fine tunes to get us there. Like the, probably one story, I don't even know if it's really been mentioned, but like the freeloader, right? He catches bass apparently.
Pretty good apparently.
And the whole time we were working on the freeloader, it was, originally we just wanted a chatterbait trailer, but Wheeler wanted something. He felt like a lot of chatterbait trailers didn't let a chatterbait hunt as much as it should, right? He thought there was too much drag on him. So a freeloader was actually like more kind of like fluke-esque. Like, you know how flukes kind of got a little
More boxy.
broad stance, a little boxy, and then it was like a little rounded kind of when it started. And the more we played with it on that, on a chatterbait, it just, I don't know, it just looked like a trailer. Like he wanted to hunt a little more. So we kept trimming the sides down, and then it just happened to get like this whole time. I remember from like the time I started talking to Wheeler about mid-strolling and some of this jig head stuff that you can do with a minnow and forward-facing sonar. And he's like, yeah, I've played with it a little bit. I really think there's kind of something to have on that rock. And I think if we narrow freeloader down, we can kind of get it to do that on our hybrid swim bait jig, right? That 60-degree line tie, rocking nice and good. And so when we were right before we went to like the final revision, we actually slimmed it down like another, I can't remember what it was. It was like 2 millimeters.
It was wider.
Oh yeah, it was much wider than originally. But again, we started looking at like, well, okay, if we wanted to do more, Wheeler thought you got better action in that thinner sides. But like I said, the more in the back of his head, he's like, he kind of already knew at some point he's going to be able to put that thing on a jig head and catch him in a tournament, right? I think he was kind of thinking Gunnersville, but it wasn't until he was kind of pre-practice around a chick and he started wrecking them on like community holes with it behind boats, shaking that freeloader, But like going into it, that last little decision to like from him in his eyes to shrink that down just a little more to make it a little less stable. He thought it not only helped as a chatterbait trailer, but also on a jig head. Turns out it did. It was perfect. So like I said, a little bit of luck there that then he goes on to win on Gunnersville, but also there was a little thought behind the madness,
Yeah. Well, kind of like the boxiness almost reminds me. It's almost Jerky J-esque, like
a little bit
the boxiness of it.
Yeah.
But dude, that's crazy. What was the hardest bait that you guys designed to get right? Of like the lineup that you came out with, which one was the most tedious?
Honestly, it's either the mare or, and both 3 and 4 inch, right? Those are the first the two sizes we launched, and those or Bronco Bug were the hardest.
How come? I guess starting with the mare. Like, why was the mare so difficult?
Getting a swim bait to swim engage like immediately.
Yeah.
Is really hard.
Yeah.
And then allowing it to maintain a good kick without, like, we didn't want a whole lot of body roll to it.
Sure.
At a higher speed, or like what a more normal retrieve speed might be, is also really hard, right? Like that balance of, because you can get them to start up really quick if you make a bigger paddle,
right?
With like a thinner midsection.
Yep.
But then that causes it to get all kinds of squirrely.
Yep.
At higher speed. So dialing that in took a lot of revisions because you'd nail it in. We did the 4 inch first.
This speed, and then you'd sacrifice.
We did the 4 inch, and then you scale down for 3, but then you got to make another 10 revisions off of that. So you did a dozen revisions on the 4 inch. Now you're like 24 plus revisions total on just trying to make a swim bait like kick at the slowest speed possible that you would retrieve it. And a lot of that was just throwing it out and like trying to crawl, like picturing yourself fishing like in November, trying to crawl a 3 inch mare on the bottom for smallmouths or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And so that was really hard. And then Bronco Bug, just getting that dang thing to swim, and it was, we talked about this the other night, right? Like a dew live beaver, and there's a couple other creatures out there, but like those style baits, it's a super cool, unique action.
Super cool.
But a lot of them, like the plastic's really brittle. It's like fishing a Senko. Like you catch one on it, or it sniffs a piece of grass wrong, and it's trash. So, making the body a little bigger to accommodate a little bigger hook, and also get a little more use out of it, right? You get a little more durability in that. But when you do that, the thing doesn't want to swim like it should, you know?
Right,
So there's, that was probably, I can't remember how many versions of a Bronco bug there were, but it was definitely.
Hello, Bastronauts. Introducing the new demo program from Vocelka Fishing and Customs. That's right. You can try a rod before you buy it. If you're fishing the Team Trail or the Champions Tour this upcoming season, you're eligible for this. There's no down payment. There's no upfront purchase required. Just contact Mr. Vocelka before the event. And let's say you want to try a new hair jig rod out for Okoboji or Mille Lacs, or you need a new tube rod going into a smallmouth event. Contact Mr. Vocelka ahead of time, and you can actually try that rod out in practice before you buy it. You have to return it before tournament day, though, unless you're going to buy it, because these things are weapons. They're absolute weapons. So that's the new demo program from Vocelka Fishing and Customs. Contact Dane today and schedule the finest rod using experience north of the Mason-Dixon.
Hey guys, Gaff with Waypoint Angler Supply here. Just wanted to highlight the fact that we have the big bass resource right here. Obviously, everybody in Minnesota knows about Kitex and the littler swim baits like these bait labs here. But we're here to have the big baits here in the store. We got Huddlestons, we've got the dangerous swim baits, the jointed claw glide baits, and the bull shooter glide baits. But it's not only the baits. We've got big rods, big reels, big line, and all that good stuff for you guys to go ahead and chase your biggest fish of your life. So swing on into Waypoint Angler Supply and get hooked up with the biggest tackle around.
Had to be up in the upper teens for sure.
Damn.
Yeah, it was, and you know, like the worst part is sometimes it was like little, we take a little off and then, you know, make a new mold, look at it, and you're like, we should have gone more, you know? So like, you maybe knew it was the right way, but you're like, we should look at, you know, shaving a millimeter off here and adding a little width here into that, you know, into the hinge or whatever it is. And then you do it and you're like, it didn't work. But then that's when, like me and Marco would be cutting stuff off and gluing it on to, like, you know, trying to add weight, take away plastic in certain areas. Then you could kind of like scale it out and have maybe a better idea into the next version on what to do. Yeah.
That's crazy. How much? So was Wheeler like, we need to make this with the Bronco bug?
Yeah, he was like, this is hands down the coolest, you know, action that no one really knows about.
Was he winning shit on that deal before?
A little bit, but honestly, his biggest problem, he just didn't like fishing it because he went through them so much, right? Like that was one of the big things. But he's like, dude, they eat it. Reeling it in, he's like, I don't know. There's not a whole lot of other plastics. I just get bit, like flip into something, you know, hop it up once or twice, and then reel it. And it does it in. You're like, okay. And then the other thing on the Bronco bug, when it hits the bottom, it does that. I call it the Bronco buck, but if you watch the legs, they kind of fold over and bounce back. Yeah. But a lot of, you know, competition don't have that really nice defined secondary action. Yep. So that was another part of like what made Bronco bug so hard to really dial in, right? Like there should be a secondary action in most things, and sometimes it just happens, right? And you know, in a swim bait, you could consider starting up at slow speeds almost a secondary action, because your primary action is like you want normal that much wide or wiggle the tail, and you want the body to rock this much. But on a fall, you still want the tail to do something, which means right when you start it up, it starts kicking. So, you know, sometimes it's just built in or you know, probably part of the design, but then to try to force a secondary action into something is a lot harder. Yeah. Especially when like you have limitations of, you know, physics and science and gravity, whatever you want to call it, right? Yeah, there's only so many things you could do to make stuff do it, but if you play around with it enough, you kind of get there. But yeah, it was one he was fishing, but not, like he knew what was there. And really, like all these shapes originally, I mean, it was just he like Frankenstein stuff, right? tip of a claw from this thing, the width of a claw from this body. Like he had all kinds of hand pores. Like he's got, you know, a lot of buddies from back home in Indiana that hand pour thing. So, you know, whatever, a certain body thickness on a craw or a certain, you know, on like a beaver style bait, this body thickness, you know, whatever it was. But he just had stuff glued together that was like his brainchild. Like if you want to make the perfect craw, that's what it looks like. Now none of them like swam or anything, but when he
like you get it to do that. Yeah.
But yeah, the like it should be that thick, it should be that wide, it should, you know, that density to it, this amount of salt or whatever it is. Yeah. Like it was pretty wild to deep dive into Jake's brain to like, whoa, I kind of want to shut the box for a second. Like, it's too much. It's too much, dude.
It's like Jumanji. Like,
yeah.
It's never, just can't get out of here. I hate that movie, by the way. It's the worst movie ever.
The OG, the original?
I hate the OG one.
Yeah, I don't like the OG one.
I never saw the new one.
The new one's better. I like
the old one ruined me. I'm like, I'm not doing it again.
Yeah, and especially if you watch the new one, then watch the original. The original is like even worse. So I'm with you there.
If you want to watch the worst movie of all time, OG Jumanji, absolute shitbox.
There's probably worse, but yeah, definitely.
Oh yeah, there's worse, but you know that one's up there.
That's up there
or down there. Yeah.
However you look at the ranking system.
Yeah, glass half full kind of guy.
Right.
Let's go. Yeah. What's a bait you're most proud of with Crush City? Like you take pride in what you do, just like I take a lot of pride in what I do. Like you put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into them baits. Is there one that? I mean, I have guesses. I have my two guesses, but
what are your guesses?
Mine would be the freeloader or the Bronco Bug would be my two guesses.
I'd say Bronco Bug for sure.
Really?
Yeah.
That's like my favorite bait. I mean, I love that bait.
Man, they bite it too.
Dude, it gets bit.
I love it. They bite the crap. It's like, I feel like I could go out with 8 rods rigged up with a Bronco Bug 8 different ways and just know they're going to eat it. Yeah. Like whatever situation you come into, they're going to bite it. Like it's kind of cool to have something like that. And I love, you know, the DNA of a Bronco Bug, right? Like there's a lot of really cool JDM things that like most people have no idea about, right? Mm-hmm. You get a very good glimpse into like that whole other dimension of baits.
Waypoint Angler Supply is the looking glass, the doorway, the paradox, the whatever word you want to use into that. It's a gateway into heaven.
1,000,000%. And I went there for the first time back in October when I was up. We had some meetings for a couple of days, and I slipped out after. It was as cool as I thought it would be.
Good.
I spent way too much money in there.
Same.
And it was cool. Like Gaff was in there, so I got to hang out with him for a while and you know, just look at stuff. And he'd be like, "Oh, dude, have you seen these like anything from like little weird terminal accessories?"
Oh, the terminals.
That you might think like, "Why would I need that?" But then you think, "I do need that." Right? You slide that into the basket. Yeah, it's awesome. But bringing that kind of stuff, like those really cool, unique actions, like more mainstream, and then just, you know, improving in ways like, you know, our plastic, I think is more durable.
So
our
much
body
more durable.
Thickness, you know, fits whether you want to run an EWG or a straight shank.
You can do either.
And like I said, that secondary action, like I think that's the coolest thing at Bronco Bug. If you watch it fall and hit the bottom and those legs do that final little kick, like tell me there's not a time where one's going to watch it fall and pop, do that little Bronco buck, and then go, okay, yeah, I'm gonna eat that thing.
Yeah.
You know, like that. That's super cool. They're all sweet. What if I would have said BLT?
I'd have said fuck you.
That was like 2 revisions.
Done.
Add
3 more ribs to the tail,
and we got it.
And
that was salt content was the hardest one for that one.
I believe that.
Like to get to get buoyancy where we wanted it. But otherwise that was like as a product manager, you're like an easy one.
Did you guys like the buoyancy? I feel like of that, it's more so like how hard of a little boner are we talking about? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
basically.
Took a little too much Viagra on this one. Yep, we need to tame it back to about a
sprinkle a little salt in there to just tone her down a hair.
Down. Yep. A heavier one can't lift as high.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the magic number on the clock? Is it 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock?
It's probably like 11 depending on your. But we were also
11 or 1. Oh, are you using a swinging Ned head?
We were working on swinging Ned while we were working on BLT.
They'll make it do 11 to 1.
So it's it's wherever the hell you want it to be,
Yeah.
But yeah, probably like 11. Like on a 1/4 ounce Ned head, it'll stand it up at like 11 o'clock.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Super buoyant.
What's your favorite, like, Bronco bug?
Bronco bug.
How are you rigging that? Because it seems like I haven't fished the Bronco bug a bunch because I hadn't been out a long time, and Sobe didn't give me any when I asked for some.
Oh, well, we'll get it fixed up. Also,
I got
we're
some
coming
now.
Okay. All right.
I'm good. I'm just saying I have more time with the Duo.
Sure.
I would free rig that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty much what I did with it.
Yeah, I've probably caught most back to like the, what are your 5 rods you're rigging up? Yeah, Texas rig, ringed, like a 4/0 EWG. Man, it's hard to beat that. But I do free rig it a lot. I throw it on a like a swinging rugby head or like a biffle head, whatever you want to.
That seems like it'd be,
dude,
dynamite.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I've looked at it a lot in the tank, and it really depends. Like you almost kind of have to pop it every now and then to help those legs kind of do something because they weigh so much.
Oh, I suppose.
Like when you're reeling it, they're not moving a whole lot. Like It's really subtle. Now it still looks really natural, and those like little forward-facing appendages we have on the side are sitting there quivering. So, even if you're like barely scooting it along, there's stuff happening. But every now and then, if you kind of like give it a little pop and let it like kind of buck up or whatever, like they bite the tar out of it. I've also been playing around with it on the back of a football jig, and or just a flipping jig.
Interesting. Yeah.
Like cut basically on the back. If you look at it, there's a Rapala like stamped in the. If you cut it like right there, which is right kind of where the hook ribs start, you can thread it on most like 1/2 ounce jigs or a 3/4 for like a football. But it like swims a little bit. You got to trim the skirt down.
That's what I noticed when I did it that way. Yeah.
But I like it's kind of a super cool, unique jig trailer and a good way to like add some beef.
Beef.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially like in an offshore, like a hard spot situation.
Right. I was wondering if you could tip it like sideways and put it on a swim jig, what it would do. Like, you know what I mean? Like you swim it this way. Has anyone ever done it this way on a swim jig and see if it like does that? It kind of
does, but again, the weight, like it was designed to be horizontal.
That makes sense.
So you need the water flow, like the way the contour is. That makes it swim the best. It kind of does it. You'll usually get one leg, like the bottom leg.
The bottom one, that would
better
make sense.
Than the top. The top one just kind of flops.
Due to science.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, science.
Okay, so you're saying more like a buzzbait then? Like.
Yeah. For sure.
A weird dolphin buzzbait.
I've even played around with like a like a weighted swim bait hook. And like
it's like a buzz toad.
Like a horny toad kind of thing. Yeah.
Does it like dolphin on?
It like kind of tickles the surface. You can't really get like a sound, but it's doing stuff, right? Obviously, they bite it. That I need to play around with a little more because I started doing that like late in the summer last year. Me and Wheeler were basically trying to see like what are the best ways you can rig it, right? So you just throw it on everything, And in most situations, which is kind of
C rig is decent.
C rig, it's awesome. Like but it's kind of a cool practice. You know, like think of a something laying in your boat or in your shop or whatever, in your storage area of tackle, that you're like, man, I wonder what I do with that. Just rig it on everything.
It's like a speed crowd.
It's like of the
future.
You'll find out like 3 or 4 ways you think it works really good at, right? Which is really just preference.
Yep.
The bass, like the thing I've learned in doing this, you just put a plastic on D, all the above. They bite it.
You'll catch a bass.
You'll catch a bass, yeah. But there'll be a couple that you feel a lot more confident about throwing. And then you can like put that in your rotation for jig trailers or whatever it is, topwater stuff.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's such a cool bait, man. Personal opinion, I think, do you guys got any different sizes in that coming? Like a 5-inch?
Not yet.
Or 3.5?
I'm thinking smaller.
3?
Yeah. It's really hard to get those things to swim, though.
That's just it.
Yeah.
That 3.5 size is nice. In the Do Live, anyway. Like finesse profile.
Yeah.
And then, like, if you had a 5-inch on a big, like, I don't know, jig trailer or something, or like a big old jig or something,
they'd bite it. That's kind of like, really like the fun thing now of that kind of tight year one launch is, we have, some new stuff coming in 25, but also now we can kind of start playing around with our, like our base models, right? And then it's just deciding which sizes we need. Like Wheeler really wants a smaller Bronco bug. And I agree. Like I think especially, for crossover into smallmouth stuff too, like just from maximizing effectiveness in the market, right? That would be a good thing to do. But yeah, it's kind of fun to just like, what happens if we make this thing really huge? Like in any of the shapes, right?
Right. Oh, like a massive freeloader or a smaller one, and call it the Mooch Minnow?
The Mooch.
The Mooch.
Yeah, that Mooch is a cool dude.
Like, is that going to be sold out, like, before it gets released? It seems like there's a lot of hype around that bait.
Yeah, and I think it's warranted too, right? Like it's a again, like a fun take on a shape most people are familiar with, right? Just like a straight tail minnow, but it's TPE. We thought about making a 3.25 inch freeloader. I guess it'd be 3.25 if you scale it down, right? It'd be 3.25. And we're like, man, there's a better mousetrap for that shape in that size. Like, and that was Wheeler's whole thing, right? Like, I want to maximize my time on the water. And when I get to that size bait, I'm either rigging it on a drop shot, I'm putting it on a, just a jig head. And if I do that, I really want TPE. And so we're like, well, okay, freeloader is plastic. It's PVC. So making a TPE freeloader would be weird. Maybe a little confusing. Because, like, our bag, like BLT, has, like, that little, sticker that says, hey, this is super TPE.
Yeah.
And then on the back, the warning no one ever reads that it doesn't play well with PVC plastic. So we're like, that'd get confusing because you'd buy the little ones, you'd put them in your box with bigger ones, if you're not keeping them in the bag, and then they just melt together and become one big freeloader.
Then people have to buy more.
Blob. Then they gotta buy more.
But then they're sold out, so then they can't. So then they're pissed.
And it's just a vicious cycle. Yeah. So yeah, but that idea of having kind of like a swim bait tail that's like kind of a swim bait, but not, but it's subtle, but it's also like a counterweight when it's on a drop shot. It helps it kind of like,
yeah, it's like a
bounce around, and
it's like a, like a gas pedal in your car.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you put a pedal on the back of it, type of
yeah,
thing.
kind of
Just like a pedal.
Yep.
Like it's just like got a pedal on it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a boot.
It's not a boot. It's like a tab.
Or
a
like
little tab on it.
Like those old movies. I've been working on like those picks.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a pick on the back. That
has
flexies.
Yeah.
That people used to do ditches with and stuff.
Yep, that was the inspiration. We're like, just take that pickaxe thing, throw it on the back of that, and call her good.
Yeah, remember when Johnny Cash was singing for the prisons and then that work they were doing? Put one of those pickets on the back.
Do one of them.
Do one of them. Make it mooch more.
Yeah.
So
we need more
when you were
mooch.
developing that, like Wheeler's like, more mooch.
More mooch. Well, it's funny because Mooch Minnow was like my working file name for it. So
Great.
that was just me. Like, I don't know. You got to keep them all sorted,
yeah.
right? When I'm like, I don't know. Most of them are like, Freeloader was like,
Got 6 bitch minnows. I can't use that again.
I can't remember. Bronco Bug was like, it was just like 4-inch creature, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Cleanup Craw was like Craw, like BLT was Ned Bait.
Mm-hmm.
So like most of the time we're not overly creative, but like, Mooch Minnow was like Mooch Minnow. Like, that sounds kind of cool. Like mooching, moping.
It's got a ring to it.
Yeah, like I kind of like where it is. And then Wheeler liked it, so we kept rolling. And yeah, but the whole time getting that thing to swim, that was the hardest part of that whole. In the instance where you do want it moving, whether it's on a drop shot or on a jig head, like having that, it's like a real tight kicking, and it almost kind of like it's got a little twist to it because it's got that top tab, so it's kind of rotating, but the body's real stable. So the tail's kind of just doing this, but getting that thing to actually work in that size, like if we would have made a 5-inch right away, probably would have been no problem because it would have been big enough. Grab water, but like
been mooching everywhere.
Yeah, if you look at it, it's a lot more. There's a lot more to it than just like a flat tab. There's like a little design kind of behind it to help water flow and move it. And
what was the idea behind that, or I guess like how did that come about with like that little tab? Because I'll be honest, you see a lot of minnow designs out there. There's a lot of minnows. There's a lot of plastic minnows.
There are, and he that was a Wheeler brainchild that he'd wanted for a long time, of like a really subtle swim bait minnow thing, because he's like, I can always cut them off if I really just want a straight tail.
Totally
thing,
true. Yeah,
I'll just cut the tabs off. It's like, but I think there's a lot of times I could, if it swims right, I think I can just reel it and catch them. Or if I'm shaking it on a drop shot, or pulling it, whatever, St. Lawrence River, if you're in the current and that thing's just kicking a little bit and you're holding it still, it's like, there's no way they won't bite it. It's like, but I want a swim bait that's not a swim bait, but it does kind of swim. It like kicks a little, but also it doesn't have to do anything in situations I don't want it to. If I'm truly Demiki rigging, it just kind of helps as like a counterweight on the tail to help it bounce. And that was kind of it. Like that one he kind of sketched up. I went down to his house for a little while last year to just like fully dive in. Like, what I was talking, the gluing stuff together, and that's all we did for a couple of days was like look at stuff in the pool, look at stuff in his garage, measure. I was measuring widths of things that he was trimming down or saying yes, no, more or less, taking notes on all that. Like it was super cool, but that was one of those that like we looked at several versions of mooch in his pool, and like, if you just walked by and you watched one swim, you'd be like, no, they're all the same. But in his mind, he's like, no, the top tab's not moving enough, the bottom one's not moving enough. Yeah. They're like, yeah.
You're like, sure.
Okay. I think they're gonna bite it.
Yeah.
It's gonna work, dude.
Oh, it works. So that's coming out when? iCast?
That's an iCast.
Okay. I only got one thing. Need to make sure that Waypoint Angler Supply gets some soon, so I can help.
If Jack is listening to this, he can help make that happen.
Jack with Rapala. Please,
sir.
For the love of God, for the Minnesotans.
Also, I was going to tell you this the other day because, you asked me if I had any mooch minnows. And I was like, well, I mean, of course I got some mooch minnows.
Yeah.
But you don't have any yet. Now, after tomorrow, I might be able to let you leave with a pack. as a, thank you for staying up late and letting me pod with you.
Letting you stay up.
Yeah, I guess we're both up late, but
Dude, I feel bad. Like, we got a derb tomorrow.
we do got a derb. First one of the year.
I'm so excited.
Yeah, me too.
For the derb.
For the derb.
First derb of the year.
First derb. Yeah.
Last thing,
Yep.
and then I do think we should hit the hay or else.
Yeah, we also, I don't even know what time it is.
Where'd our
Early.
friends go? They're gone.
They're super asleep.
time is it?
It's almost 1.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, we're derming hard in the morning.
How do the Rapala folks test their Rapala depths? That's my last question.
Oh, we got, you're talking Finland, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like the original, like finish way was basically like a, like a vertical test where like you jump and you tap the colored things. They kind of move out of the way. It's basically picture that, but flipped upside down underwater.
In a lake.
In a lake, off a big dock. And then one guy at the end, one guy at the other end with the rod, and a set amount of line, whatever that is. And it would vary depending on what you're looking for, whether it's a troll depth or a casting depth. But, yeah, dude drops it in the water. You reel parallel to the dock and run it into that thing. Right? From like, I mean, they still use it a little bit now. We obviously have some other ways in forward-facing sonar. Like most of the time now when I'm checking depth on a bait, it's just active target.
Yep.
Or what
Forward-facing sonar. Yep.
Yeah, but throw it out there, look at it. But yeah, that's like and it's so simple, but you're like, damn, that like you can't get any more accurate than a measured.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes they'll do like a set bar, and they'll know like the ting, like if a crankbait goes over and say this is the bar it's supposed to hit, and it just goes dink. They know just the trebles hit it, so it's too shallow, right? So then they make a new version, and vice versa. If it goes too deep, you'll get like the line will pull over, and it'll pull up and clank over the thing, and it makes this weird.
They're like, no,
thud.
That's a DT-15.
Yep, nope, we gotta tone her down.
Next.
We need the 14.
Dude, we're going to have a part 2. This is super epic. I'm very grateful for this.
Heck yeah, man. No, I appreciate it. It was awesome. And I'm with you. There's so many more things I would love to keep talking about. But, we'll save it for a later date and time, and I'll try to make it to your abode.
You're welcome anytime, anywhere. Well, you know where, but anytime, dude. Yeah.
I appreciate it, man.
Well, I'd shake your hand, but mine's swollen.
Wiggity.
Oh, all right. What show was that? Oh, fuck.
Hey Arnold? No.
Great show.
Not Hey Arnold.
Stoop Kid's afraid to leave his stoop. Yes, it wasn't that, though. It was Rocket Power.
Rocket Power.
Nickelodeon shit.
Woo.
All right. You heard it here first. The Kyle Wood, Teal's Bass Galaxy. Checking in, checking out. Bye.